Complicated Creation by Elemental. Chapter 4. Reunited and Returned. September nears and the heat doesn't seem to abate in the slightest, the humidity clawing and heavy and making everyone grumpy and uncomfortable. Bakugo and Todoroki both retake their exams, catching up with their classmates at last, and making real progress. Todoroki still needs to work on his flame, and Bakugo his attitude, but they have the time to do so. He's looking after one of the most promising classes he's had in years. Shota thinks, though he'll never tell them that. It's important to keep them on their toes, important for them to understand how fragile their positions are now, so they can understand how fragile the world is later. So much will hang on their shoulders, and it's his duty to ensure they have the foundation to carry that weight and not crumble, or they'll die. This class has surprised him, time and again. Reckless, self-sacrificing, far too smart for their own good. They're going to be the heroes this world needs, Shota knows, and he hates how much the world will need them. He dismisses them for the day after warning that Okayama will be handling them for Friday and Saturday classes, and he tries to tune out their chatter as he heads to the gates of UA. "You're running?" Tsuji asks as he approaches, offering him a quiet smile. It's rare to see the reserved man out of his hero costume, but they have to travel, and Kisagiraman's fursuit is a bit much. "Karada arrived an hour ago. Says she's scoping the area out."
"So by the time we get there, we'll have a rating of every bar surrounding the place,"
Shota retorts. Karada's a fine underground hero with an amazing grasp of her quirk, but he's not sure if her drinking habit really is necessary to her quirk or just a crutch. She isn't the only underground hero with issues. He's no hypocrite. But recently her reports have gotten ever so slightly slappy. He's worried. Hopefully this team-up will give him a read on her and maybe remind her she isn't working alone. It's the curse of underground heroes all too often, one he's avoided ever since becoming a teacher at UA. It's hard to feel alone when dealing with the idiots he shares a staff room with. He'd really rather be alone sometimes. "You're not being fair to her," Tsuji chides him with an even voice. "The point is for us to go in without causing suspicion. With half the ward burned out as it is, she's only going to manage a limited range." He gives another easy smile, steady and solid. "We'll probably just get a top 10 list for what's walking distance."
"Not sure if that's better,"
Shota points out in what he thinks is a reasonable voice. When he looks to Tsuji, there's worry lining the other hero's face too, so maybe he's not the only one concerned about their fellow hero. Tsuji's a good man, reliable, and calm in a crisis. Shota's glad to have him on the team. They don't talk about the case as they walk towards the station to catch the Shinkansen to Okayama, and they don't mention it as they settle in for the 4-hour ride. Tsuji pulls out his phone, likely to read up on the files one more time. Shota curls up against the window and tries to fall asleep, knowing there won't be much to have over the next 2 days. Taking down the Shie Hassaikai has quieted things down for such a short period of time. It only showed just how tenuous everything was after All Might's retirement. Too many villains are stepping up to try to take advantage of the void All Might had left behind. He knew it would come to this, and warned about it over the last few years. But no one took Old Man Aizawa's doom and gloom seriously while All Might continued to mug for the cameras and pretend like he'd live forever. Still, he can't pin all the blame on Yagi. The man had been supported by the entire industry, or close enough to it. He hadn't built the pedestal they placed him on. At some point between mental grumbling about the state of heroics and Yagi's personal responsibilities and Okayama Station, Shota falls asleep. He knows the others make fun of him for it, teachers and students alike, but he's unbothered. They like to assume he's just sleep-deprived or lazy or both. It's a better answer than the truth. Then it's much easier to fall asleep to noise and the knowledge of people around him than it is to try to sleep in silence and wonder what will creep up on him inside of it. Tsuji wakes him as they approach the station by gently nudging his knee. Shota appreciates how much he never has to explain to the other man. They collect their bags and run to make the transfer to Sinu Station. From there they have to walk. The local lines that once fed into Minami Ward were destroyed, along with much of the area itself. Karada meets them dressed in civvies. The Karada is both her civ and hero name. "You made it!" she greets, far too bright and loud in the quiet of the neighborhood. "Come on my dinner. Well, about dinner, but this place has a proper kitchen so I can heat it up." Cajoling and warm, she grabs both Shota and Tsuji and drags them towards the very edges of the damaged ward. On one side of the street is a school that has been half crushed by a massive foot. On the other is a line of still intact homes that have seen better days, faded paint and cracked asphalt and weeds growing long. One of them has a clearly new front door, and that's the one Karada drags them into. Once inside, she relaxes a bit. The neighbors are noisy. They think I'm house-sitting for my aunt and using it as an excuse to party. The walls are thick enough not to carry our voices, and I swept the place once I got in, but we should still keep it down. She does in fact head to the kitchen. Are you hungry? The place up the street does home-style fried chicken, so I got enough for today and tomorrow at least. She nods to Tsuji. And some noodles for you if you're still vegetarian. Thank you, he says, still standing in the hallway, seemingly overwhelmed by her everythingness. Shota ignores it with the help of practice. This isn't his first mission with the aerosol hero, and it will be his last.
Any updates about demolition?
He asks as they settle at the ancient-looking table to eat. Another sighting this morning, she offers readily and hands over the report. The villain they're looking for had been one to escape the Yakuza raid and had evaded capture since. Shota doesn't want to admit he's personally invested in the man, but Demolition had buried 5 heroes to get away, and he'd had taken an emergency crew to get them out, battered and half suffocated. He wanted the man contained in Tartarus as soon as possible. And now he was hiding here. Minami Ward, site of one of the greatest quirk accidents in recent years, still too unstable to repair and quickly going to the weeds. It's not a large space in the grand scheme of things, and not completely abandoned, but nearly 15 square kilometers of ruined buildings and abandoned farmland gives a man with the ability to manipulate concrete and steel and make it explosive both plenty of places to hide and ample ammunition. Karada pulls out a map and spreads it across the table. I've done some basic scouting, she explains as she points out what areas and buildings suffered the worst and where the plants make passage nearly impossible. If we start here, she points to the northern edge of the ward along the Sasagase River. We can move through the industrial area first. He's been sighted here, she notes with a mark, here and here, as well as at these 2 bars. Her impish expression shifts to something sour. I took a look at both, and there's no accounting for taste.
Shota looks at the map and wonders at the timeline they have. He may need Okayama to cover his class for another day or two if this is all they have to go on. Let's start here, he agrees, trusting Karada's judgment. Tsuji can take buildings from the bottom up, and I'll work top down.
They plan as best they can, because no plan ever really survives meeting the enemy, and then don their hero costumes and get to work. Shota doesn't let himself get distracted on the field, which means he isn't thinking about Deku at all, which means that when he stumbles on the boy, almost literally, asleep in a tiny corner of the otherwise dilapidated office building, he nearly doesn't believe it. Unfortunately, Deku seems to believe in him because he wakes with a jolt and screams in abject horror, and a moment later, Shota is too late to stop him from jumping out the window! There's no glass to stop it, but it's still a 2-story drop onto a metalworking plant that is nothing but rusted metal, and Deku had jumped! Shota follows before he even realizes his feet are moving, capture weapon anchored to give him a safer route down. Eraserhead, report! Kisagiraman's voice cuts through the radio.
Found someone, not our target, but another case.
He explains tersely, searching in the pre-dawn light to see where the problem child had gone. This area is more densely built than the others, but he hears the rattle of scrap metal and focuses in on it.
He's moving west. Engage carefully. He's a minor. I want to try to talk to him. He can teleport if he gets spooked.
But Deku hasn't yet, Shota notices, and he hadn't when they'd taken him to the station, not until he'd felt threatened and overwhelmed. Shota doesn't know if it just takes too much energy, or if he needs an accomplice, or if what Deku had said was true. He wanted to help! Now he needs to try to make things right. Damn, he's quick! Karada exclaims. He went to the blue building with the caved-in roof, climbed up the debris, and through the 2nd floor window. Do you want me to follow?
No, keep an eye on the exits. Kesagiraman, you too. I don't want any other surprises to show up, but he's just a kid. I'll go in. He's not a threat.
At least that's what Shota tells himself. He doesn't want to believe Deku is a threat. He could be, when threatened, but Shota isn't going to threaten him. He just needs to talk him down. And apologize. He at least has a lot of experience talking down hyperactive teenagers at this point. Apologies are less familiar. The ground entrances are all boarded up, but true to Garada's words, there's basically a ramp of debris leading to the second floor, and a window broken open waiting to be taken advantage of. Shota climbs in carefully, keeping his motions slow, and his capture weapon around his neck, not in his hands.
Deku.
He calls once inside, and his eyes adjust to the very low light. He takes out a flashlight so he doesn't break his neck tripping over abandoned desks and toppled filing cabinets.
I just want to talk.
There's silence, and Shota steps inside further, heading upstairs when the second floor proves empty. There's a gaping hole in the stairwell, but he can also see the dust has been disturbed across from it, and if he listens very carefully, he thinks he can hear Deku's heavy breathing. He climbs across the missing stairs and examines the third floor, which looks much the same as the second, save for having a few less desks and holding one wide-eyed teenager who looks, Shota thinks in horror, even worse than when he met him. You have got to be fucking kidding me! Deku croaks, and his voice is rough. Dust? Disuse? Or the plant pollen in the area? It's dangerous if exposed to it for too long, one of the reasons the area is still mostly uninhabited. How the hell did you find me?
We're looking for someone else, a villain named Demolition. I'm just as surprised to see you here as you are me, I think.
Honesty is probably the best he could do right now.
Look, Deku, I owe you an apology. I'm sorry about before. If we'd known you'd be triggered, I wouldn't have had Mind Blank get involved like that.
Mind Blank? Deku is a few feet from the wall of windows, and these are mostly intact. Shota really hopes he doesn't try to make a break through them. Well, that's an appropriate name.
I think so, too.
Shota replies, stalling for time. The longer he can keep the kid talking, the better.
We still want to help you. You don't have to deal with this on your own.
Deku looks at him, looks past him, then beside him, and Shota instantly throws an arm out trying to see if it will connect with anything at all, whatever invisible accomplice or jailer Deku has. His arm connects with nothing, and Deku laughs in the same pained way that Itoshi laughed when they'd found him, in the same way Shota had laughed when everything had hurt more than he thought he could bear, and there was no one to rely on but himself. Deku looks at him, and his eyes seem to glow in the dim light of the room and the bright contrast of the flashlight. And what am I dealing with, Eraserhead? Is it a trick question? Shota shakes his head.
I don't know. We have some guesses, but unless you tell us, that's all they are. I know you're hurting.
That much is obvious.
And I know you deserve better.
And that's easy, because every teenager thinks they either are horribly underdeserved and deserve so much more, or that they are the worst examples of humankind and deserve nothing at all.
And that statement covers both.
Shota doesn't know what to do with the disappointment in Deku's face, doesn't know how to translate that into meaning when the kid shakes his head sadly and looks like an ancient old man as he hugs his arms to his chest and sags. I told you once, he says, exhaustion coloring every word in a way that makes Shota ache. I can't do it again. Shota doesn't get a chance to reply. An explosion breaks the quiet of the morning and rattles the windows, though they thankfully do not break. His calm flares to life a moment later. Hey, there! Karada's voice is panicked. He just came up through them! Her voice is cut off by a scream, and Shota can hear Kisagiraman's quirk as it cuts through something. Probably scrap. Fuck. He's torn for a moment.
Deku, you need to get down and away from here. This man is dangerous. But don't leave, please.
He can't keep the kid. If he tries to hold him, it's too likely he'll disappear. And if he stays, he's putting his teammates at a severe disadvantage. They need him to cancel Demolition's quirk. He can't wait any longer. Karada is calling for help as another explosion goes off too close, and Shota heads for one of the windows, calling out for Karada and Kisagiraman to stay out of the way as he tosses a chair through first before anchoring his capture weapon.
Get down and away from here,
he tells Deku once more.
I'll find you after.
He hopes like hell that Deku will take it as a promise, not a threat, and then goes to join his team. You could have warned me! Izuku snaps at Tamamo no Mae as he hurries to get outside and away from a wall of glass. I nearly pissed myself! I didn't realize you were here, Kit, she tells him, sounding defensive. You had words to hide yourself. Do you have any idea how long it took to make those? he demands as he slides down the garbage ramp. There's already a fire at the scrapyard, and the metal plant is missing a lot more of its structure than it had been when Deku had run past a few minutes prior. Everything is in chaos! The villain's quirk makes the ground shake so much it feels like a constant earthquake, and Deku's ears are already ringing. Worse, he can see the heroes trying to fight, but the fires are interfering with Eraserhead's ability as far as Deku can tell. The unfamiliar woman hero keeps turning into a gas and surrounding the villain, but he drives her away with an explosive blast after blast. There's a third hero who Izuku recognizes a moment later as Kisagiraman, who gets in a lucky shot, but all it does is enrage the villain more. Izuku keeps back but can't help but watch. When he'd been a kid, he'd run toward hero fights, not away, and he knows how stupid that had been, how dangerous, but he was obsessed at having the chance to see them at work, to see their spirits and how their powers translated into quirks, to understand what it meant to be a hero. Now, he's faced with seeing 3 pro-heroes, 2 signified underground ones at that, facing off against a villain with an explosively powerful quirk. The villain's spirit is a mid-sized boar with overly large tusks and blood-red eyes, and Izuku can't quite connect the heroes and spirits moving around at first glance. Tamamo no Mei is standing with him, not Eraserhead, and there's a small pixie creature flying around at high speeds his eyes can only barely register, and a very large stag hanging back and watching the proceedings with a calm gaze. Eraserhead uses his quirk to pause the villain's explosions, and Kisagiraman takes aim and moves so quickly there's a clap of thunder behind him, but somehow Demolition predicted it. He's out of range, and while he might not be able to cause explosions, he's still immensely strong, Izuku realizes. He picks up an entire car door and uses it as a shield as he charges at Eraserhead. Izuku doesn't get to see what transpires next because 2 things happen. 1, he realizes they have an audience. More spirits from various people in Minami Ward have arrived, probably to see what all the commotion is about. The other is the boar is charging him! He might have wards set against direct harm, but a spirit can still send him flying into a wall if it has enough power in its push. Izuku hits the metal siding of a shed so hard that it dents under his frame. Deku! Eraserhead calls, and there's an explosion instantly after, and no, he can't do this! If he distracts the heroes, they'll get hurt and they need to focus on the villain. He has to get up and get away before they worry about him, get away before they try to help again! You must move, Tamamo no Mei says with urgency as Izuku staggers upright. And you will leave the kids alone. He has to assume that's directed at the boar spirit. It screams in anger, and Izuku can hardly believe it because no spirit has ever fought for him willingly. He blinks his eyes to try to focus, and there's a hand helping him up. Easy there, tiger, says the woman. She's tall and dark-skinned with her hair done up in a big ball on top of her head. My name's Karada. We need to get you clear of here. He gets up with her help, his back aching and neck sore. I'm okay, he tries to assure her. You need to help them. What kind of hero would I be if I let a cute kid like you get hurt? She asks as she gets her arms under him and he's being carried, and she sounds so sure. It's such a heroic thing to say as there's explosions going on around them, and he should say no. He should help, but he'll only get in the way. So he wraps his arms around her so she can carry him easier, and they move to get out of range. They only get a few feet before Tamamo no Mei shouts, "Look out!" And they both go down in a tumble of arms and legs, and there's fire all around them now. Izuku can't hear anything. His ears are ringing from the explosion that rocked the ground, and he can barely see or breathe, and if he can't, the heroes can't. He has to do something! Dorada is coughing beside him and tugging, but he plants his feet and does not move. It takes a second to reach in. He's been asked to do things for spirits for the last 6 years, more or less, and he learned to extract a price from them early on. He always keeps it short, limited, and controllable. He will never enslave a spirit against their will. Honey! He calls out, I need your help! The spirit arrives a moment later, towering over Izuku and looking almost angry, until it registers the fire around him. Well, at least you're not wasting my time, he says, his green-blue scales glittering in the light. Help me put this out, and your debt is paid! Izuku doesn't waste any time, and neither does the spirit. He places 2 webbed hands on Izuku's shoulders, and the power that flows through him is just like water, like a cool river across tired, aching feet, like the pull of the tide, growing stronger and stronger until it's a waterfall. The fires smother around them in quick order, and Karada looks at him in appreciation. That was some quick thinking, kid, she tells him as there's a lull in the battle. But now we have to go! Demolition screams in rage, and the resulting explosion blows the building behind him up and back. So much for taking him in quietly, Karada mutters under her breath. Kiddo, I need you to go, she points. This guy's no player, now scram! Izuku nods, but he's not looking at her. He's looking at Eraserhead fighting Demolition, moving so quick with his capture weapon wrapped around the villain's arm, but it doesn't seem to slow him, and he uses Eraserhead's momentum to fling him back and then charges after him, and Izuku sees the moment Eraserhead hits the wall of scrap metal. He sees the spray of blood as the rebar goes through his chest above his heart and below his shoulder. He's already moving, his feet jumping in action before his head can even think, as the swordsman hero charges and knocks Demolition back. He can feel when Eraserhead blinks, because the boar spirit howls, and so does Demolition, and he blasts Kisegirimen back, and then grins monstrously as he simply puts his hands on the rebar jutting out of Eraser's chest and charges it! Izuku moves. He doesn't think. Not really, though he'd have done it even if he had been thinking. He runs, and while he's running, he pulls! There is the sound of crows. The sky, when Shota opens his eyes, is grape pink. It is not pink, he thinks, detached. It isn't gray either. It isn't a grayish pink, and it isn't a pinkish gray. It is somehow both colors at once, simultaneously. Not a pattern or a gradient, it's very unnerving. He thinks he is very likely concussed. He doesn't think he's dead, because he's pretty sure he doesn't believe in an afterlife, and if there was one, he doesn't think it would involve grape pink skies and also a distant agony that fills every single part of his body from head to toe. He is probably dying, though. Oh God! A voice, Deku, breaks through his disconnected thoughts. The problem child is panicking, looking down at him, skin pale and eyes blown wide. Oh my God, Okay, you're awake. Good, you're awake. I'm sorry, but it was the only thing I could think of. You were pinned and there was so much blood and he was going to use his quirk and... Breathe. Shota knows how to deal with panicking teenagers, and he manages his teacher voice now just like he had during the USJ, which is feeling far too familiar for comfort. He is going to die in front of this kid, he thinks, and the last thing Deku needs is to blame himself for it. Where are the others? He can't move his arms or legs at all. He can feel them. That is somehow worse. You need to get away to safety. Shota stops to hold off a cough. He thinks he might actually pass out if he coughs right now. His ribs are absolutely broken. Deku's breathing is high and thready, but he looks uninjured as he starts pawing through Shota's pouches. I need a knife! Which one has it? I know you carry one, you always do in case your weapon gets caught or you get... Kid, which packet has a knife? Deku's voice is high and desperate, and Shota thinks he's on the very edge of a panic attack. Not good! Right side at my hip. He feels the kid get to the pouch, and every touch is agony, but he tries not to let it show. You need... Stop it! And Deku sounds intent, now a little more focused, as he moves back into Shota's line of vision with a weapon in his hand. Shota wonders about that. Did they train him with knives? Is he used to being armed and disarmed himself around the heroes so they wouldn't see him with a weapon? Okay, so the good news is that I managed to bring you here, and you're not going to die from an explosion. He tells Shota, trying to sound comforting while moving to his shoulder and cutting away at his shirt where the rebar had gone through him. The, bad news is, I think I broke every bone in your body to do it. Kid, what? Shota doesn't know what the hell is going on. It hurts to even turn his head to try to look at what Deku is doing. Somehow the rebar is gone, he realizes, because he's flat on his back now, not leaning against a pile of trash. Did Deku move him? His thoughts being slow could be blood loss if he was pulled off whatever had pierced him. But the ground feels cool, and there's grass under his hands, and the light, he realizes. The light is too bright for dawn. How long has he been out? Where are we? What time is it? Where are the others? Everything is unnaturally quiet against the bubble of blood in his chest and the ringing in his ears. He can't hear explosions anymore, and his calm is missing. It's going to be okay, Deku says with a terrified grimace of a smile. As for where... You could say you're in my personal hell? Deku does something. Shota can't see what, but it feels strange and the pain starts to abate slightly. I usually call it the other place, or when I was a kid, it was the spirit realm, and when I'm in a mood, it's just hell, because it might as well be, but it's never told me its name, why would it? The kid does something to his hands. Is he drawing on them?
and moves to cut away the bottom of Shota's jumpsuit legs and does the same to his aching shins. The other good news is that your spirit really likes you, so you're not going to die from shock or blood loss either, which is good, because I don't think I could do this on my own at all. Are you ready? Shota begins to tell Deku to calm down, that he isn't making any sense, that he needs to look for the others. It'd be good to get the kid away before he kicked it. But before he can manage to speak, another voice curls through the air and shocks him to his bones. I am ready. He wrenches his head to the side, the movement causing agony even against whatever it is that Deku is doing. Looking down at him from barely a foot away is a giant white fox. A giant white fox with far too many tails and somehow an expression of amusement on her giant white fox face. He doesn't know why he knows she's a she, or how he knows she's the one who spoke, or how that voice had appeared in his head unlike any telepathy he's ever heard. He doesn't know why she feels so familiar either, save for a silent nagging feeling he is consciously ignoring at the moment in sheer what the ever-loving fuck disbelief. Deku, meanwhile, ignores his apparent confusion. Or perhaps Deku can't see this hallucination. Perhaps it's the bloodlust or the plant toxin. Those plants in Minami were quirk-made and very dangerous. He remembers that they'd been warned not to disturb them. The explosions could have done something. Shota tries to think, tries to focus, tries to speak as Deku puts his hands on Shota's shoulders. Bloody hands, Shota thinks. Bloody fingers. And then Deku glows.